Today's episode of Market Talk is brought to you by GrowMark FS. Keeping up on the latest in ag is a challenge, to say the least, but there are experts nearby ready to help. You'll find them at your local FS. You can trust them to bring you customized agronomic, grain, and energy solutions born of the latest thinking. That's because FS specialists receive continuous training that keeps them current on the latest trends, practices, and technologies. So you'll get local expertise that's both exceptional and up to date. Visit fssystem.com to learn how FS is bringing you what's next. Well, it has definitely been a newsworthy week in the market trade between all the USDA data and consumer price data out this week. And just looking at the overall trade reaction on Friday, relatively quiet headed into a 3-day holiday weekend. We have a lot to discuss here on the show, and pleased to welcome back into Market Talk Tommy Grisafi with Advanced Trading and Ag Bull Media. Tommy, Happy New Year, sir. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Jess, I am doing well, and thank you for having me on. I'm not as good at talking on this microphone as you are, but we're going to give her a whirl.
Hey, you know what? As long as we can hear you and you can talk about these markets, that's all we need here on the show today. And
I can do that.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick where to start because we've obviously had a lot of news this week in the markets. I think just in general, my feeling with the grains, we obviously got some bullish surprises out of the USDA data Thursday and a good day Thursday. But then Friday, it just felt like we didn't have a lot of follow through to what we saw on Thursday. I just wonder your thoughts on that. Do you agree? What is your feeling as we wrapped up the week and headed into the holiday weekend, Tommy?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that Martin Luther King Day, that we're going to close the markets. And over the years, this market used to be open, grains would be open, bonds would be closed, but we're closed. It's a holiday, and South American weather is going to be a big topic when we come back. And hopefully nothing crazy happens in Ukraine. That's really quieted down over there, Jesse. I mean, I'm sure there's still lots of bad things happening over there, but as far as the news coverage saying, as far as it comes to grains, the ports are open and we're moving grain out of there. So all eyes on South American weather as we celebrate the holiday here in the States. I do believe all markets are closed. I just received an email saying that grains will reopen, I believe, Monday night at 7 o'clock. So we're going to have a long holiday. South American weather will have to be processed. Could be bullish, could be bearish. We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I think time will tell. And, with those numbers we got on Thursday, Tommy, as I said, some bullish surprises there. I think caught a few folks off guard, to be quite honest there,
absolutely.
with what USDA had. I mean, talk about your reaction to what we saw between the WASDE report, quarterly grain stocks, winter wheat seedings. What stood out to you as the biggest surprise?
The biggest surprise is that with all the knowledge and all the technology out there, that corn was down 6 cents right before the report, and the second the report came out, corn was up 6 and up 16. That there's still a big gap between how the USDA figures out its numbers and versus someone like the Pro Farmer Crop Tour or private companies, when they have the ability to say, hey, there was 1.3, 1.4 million, 1.5 million less acres harvested. That changes the balance sheet. And I think what several analysts and experts were leaning on is that demand was down and the markets can go lower, which is true. But when they took out that harvested acre number, that was kind of the big surprise. Now, of course, bean stocks became a little tighter, and they were pretty tight going into it. That's why we have a 15 in front of it. And everyone keeps feeling, myself included, or at least I'll speak for myself, I keep feeling like the grain market's going to fall apart, and the front end's doing well. When I say front end, I mean old crop prices are doing well. If you look into later this year and then in multiple years forward, the markets were much lower. For example, Nov 23 beans were lower, yet March 23 beans were up 14. So a big difference between old crop and new crop. The market wants your grain right now, and it says, you know what, in a year, I think there'll be a lot more corn. That's why DEES 23 is around 5.95.
So with that in mind, looking at some of the spread there between old and new crop, I mean, it feels to me like it would make sense for a farmer to take a look at their balance sheet, take a look at everything here, and maybe try to get some risk management in place lock in some floors, whatever the case may be, just to try and protect some of the profit potential that is out there currently, Tommy, in case the market does start to kind of fall apart.
Absolutely. I got two things on my desk that are my favorites. Coffee, one, I want to have a sip of. And two, what you're asking the farmer to do. Take that pencil, sharpen that pencil. I have an old school electric pencil sharpener. I write in pencil all day and go through numbers and just figure out. Here's the key right here. If you sell your old crop grain and put that money in the bank to pay down operating, and some guys don't have operating, then that's awesome. The bank will give you 4 or 5% interest. So if you have 100 grand, you could put it in a 6-month CD at 4.5%. If you have $1 million extra cash, I would rather at this point, and I'm only speaking for myself, I'd rather have the cash, not have to worry about the market, put the money in a CD, earn interest, which is something new. You're too young to remember when interest rates were high, and I'm even too young. Even at 50 years old, I've never really had to deal with high interest rates. And then go buy a call or a call option. Then your risk is managed. The opposite of that is physically holding the grain in your bin, and there's a great cost in storing millions of dollars of that commodity. And the young farmers are like, wow, that's really interesting. The old farmers understand this. They just haven't had the opportunity to do this in 15 years. The young farmers are like, the bank will really give me that much money, because I'm working with several young guys right now. They have an extra $500,000 cash and they're prepaid on stuff. They're like, this is incredible. That's okay. Keep your money. You may need it for a rainy day.
Very true. That's a great point. And thinking as well, looking just overall, you mentioned South American weather at the top, and it feels like this Argentine situation just keeps getting worse. I think the latest updates, crop conditions, 7% of corn, good to excellent, 4% of beans, good to excellent. As you look at what's going on with Argentina, and then the flip side, Brazil, talking record soybean crop, still got a safrinha corn crop to be planted to go. I mean, we look at that whole situation, Tommy. What is your feeling with what you're hearing out of South America right now, and how that could just parlay itself into our trade here in the U.S. and the global dynamic overall?
Well, we know that China is really depending on South America for a lot of grain right now. And when Argentina has this hiccup, it tremendously affects meal because they export so meal. But on the flip side, Brazil's doing very well. And so we have the haves and have-nots down there. I guess the scary scenario would have been if Brazil planted as much as they did and had a big crop, and then if Argentina had a big crop. But we're going to finish up Brazil's crop. They look like they're going to have a good one there in beans. But Argentina, it's the haves and have-nots down there in South America. It's going to definitely play into the world numbers. The USDA posted the world numbers. Matter of fact, Jess, the USDA posted what they thought South Americans' numbers were. Those may change a lot if that crop doesn't improve. So they're gently backing into that bad Argentina crop. And I think they have Brazil pretty much earmarked for good things.
On the wheat side, I've heard from some farmers. I heard some talk across the countryside. Still, some farmers hanging on to some wheat. Those winter wheat seedings numbers, those were something to look at as well on Thursday. What's your feeling in this wheat market here as we head to the holiday weekend, Tommy?
I think wheat is acting strange. It was down a lot before that number yesterday on Thursday and popped. It did act well today, but it acted well. Like Kansas City was up 7, the board was up or down 1 or 2. Minneapolis was struggling. After seeing last year's wheat prices, to the American farmer, to the Canadian farmer, to anyone, $7, $8 wheat feels like horrible. But you have to remember, many times in people's career, they've sold $4 or $5 wheat. So $7 wheat feels super cheap. The problem with wheat is it can continue to go lower as Russia's going to flood the market with wheat. And I do feel, looking back after everything that's happened the last 10, 12 months, that we were never running out of wheat when wheat went from $8 to 14. But the function of the market, these new exchange traded funds that where someone can go buy WHEAT or something like that on the New York Stock Exchange, or one of the stock exchanges. I misspeaking there. But you can go buy corn, wheat, you can go buy different things. They're tied to the futures. It just got too panicked. Again, India said they weren't going to export wheat. But then when you read the numbers, Jess, they said, we're not going to export wheat to bad people who we don't like. But if you really need wheat and ask nicely, we'll sell it to you. But that Sunday night when India said they weren't going to export wheat, we opened 70 cents higher in wheat. But we're not having that type of panic, or the markets come to realization that there's wheat in the world. And if every night when I get my night runs at Advanced Trading, I see that people do tenders, and there's 10 companies in the world trying to, Egypt or someone will tender for wheat. And there's countries all over, not countries, companies all over the world that have wheat to sell them. So if they tendered and everyone said, we just don't have it, well, we'd be back to $12, $14. But this is why Board of Trade wheat's right where it is, KC, Minneapolis. I think they're fairly priced. And I think you have a farmer who's disappointed in the price. And if you're out in the West, you're really mesmerized because it's so dry out there, as you know.
Tommy Grisafi, Advanced Trading, is with us, Ag Bull Media as well. Tommy, let's talk a little bit on the livestock side. I want to also talk the economy with you too, but livestock, cattle, hogs, fairly choppy week. What do you think what is your thought in this protein sector as we kind of head to the holiday weekend? I know cash country cattle trade's been struggling a little bit this week, been waiting on it. What are you thinking right now in cattle and hogs, Tommy?
Well, I got to throw one extra in there. Eggs. I saw
Yeah.
this talk on TikTok and Twitter about eggs, and then I drove to the store, and they really were high. I was shocked. Eggs at our store were $6, 7, 8 for the fancy ones. Saw a couple $5 a dozen eggs, and you're like, uh-oh, what's wrong with those? They must be all cracked or something. Eggs used to be the thing that were 99 cents, $1.50, $2.
Yep.
Milk used to be a lot less. The whole protein sector has a story, from eggs to milk to hogs to beef. Obviously, beef's a premium protein. Not everyone in the world can just go afford to go buy your best cuts of beef. But we have become a hamburger nation, a hamburger world. I don't know many people, unless they're vegetarian or for some reason, that don't love a nice, juicy hamburger, and that's still affordable. It bums me out to see the front end of the hog market so low, but if you look out to the June numbers, they're much better. I don't see a lot of people I know trading hogs making a ton of money. I'm sure there's someone out there who's a great hog trader. I see our clients hedging live cattle, and they also, on one of those big pops this week, hedge some feeder cattle. So these are hedgeable levels if you actually have the animals. Now, if you've sold your herd, trying to replace it's very difficult. For people who are in drought-stricken areas, the price you have to go pay to get that herd back is very expensive, and the numbers don't make sense when someone goes that way. But if you own the mamas, the daddies, the babies, life's not too bad as a cattleman. But there's all different. Not everyone has as good as the next guy. That's what I'm trying to say, Jess.
Yeah, I know too. On Thursday, a lot of folks were looking at the feed numbers and trying to see how that would correlate into cattle. A lot of folks are still very bullish this cattle market here heading into 23 with, lower supplies out there. Did you see anything with the feed numbers and just how that is maybe working itself into this cattle market a little bit, Tommy?
I didn't really see anything that catches my eye. I know that definitely the punch in the face was, it was common sense that demand was down, and then all of a sudden we see that the acreage was down. Other than that, these are very small adjustments to the numbers that they made. The problem is stocks overall in grain are still pretty tight, and so when it comes to cattle, the cattleman's going to have to pay one more year of higher grain prices, and then it looks like after that things really start to calm down. But yes, the scenario for cattle is not bearish, and they seem to be gently going up week after week, just a little bit better than the next.
Tommy, let's talk the economy overall because that's going to tie into everything. I know on Friday we got University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index that rose. The Consumer Price Index out Thursday saw the decline there. On the surface, all these numbers look like they're positive for the market, but I wonder, is there something underlying here we're not seeing? What's your thoughts with some of this economic data we've gotten here this week?
Well, the economy's slowing down. There's some really nice beneficial things. I notice gas prices have come down tremendously, diesel, some of the food costs, as we had talked about, eggs are still higher. The American consumer is being plagued with just an overall higher cost of everything. That means they may not be able to buy uh, one item or two items. You're going to have your basic things you're going to pay for, your housing, your food, your utilities. But I will tell you this, I have several friends who are real estate agents, and they are saying that it's completely come to a standstill. And scarier than that is, even though real estate's been really slow in our area in the Midwest, there's very little inventory on the market. And that's kind of the conundrum in the real estate market, is that, hey, who wants to go out in Nashville and get an 8% mortgage on some house or condo that's doubled in value the last few years? And so things are slowing down. But yet when you look at like Zillow or something, there's not, where I live in my neighborhood, there's maybe 500 homes. There's maybe 10 for sale. And the buyer isn't showing up to buy these homes, and the seller's like, but hey, there's not many here. And so it's kind of, real estate's come to a halt. And I'm definitely, people involved in that industry are struggling. Also restaurants, tough. So the overall economy, what do I feel? I think the consumer's feeling a little better with gas prices. The stock market's had some good days because the Federal Reserve looks to be taking their foot off the gas. They're hinting at maybe a couple more 0.25% rises. That's why you can get so much on a short end on that 6-month T-bill. But when you look at the 30-year note, yields 10 years from now, 15, 30 years are much lower. So to me, it looks like the economy is pricing in a little bit of a recession, and the stock market's actually taken off. The stock market had a horrible year last year. It's gaining a little bit of that back as people are bottom picking certain key stocks.
You mentioned gas prices. I know WTI crude has kind of been hovering in the $70-$80 range. I know it's near 80 here as we wrap up the week. A lot of folks think this crude oil market's kind of that canary in the coal mine, so to speak. What's your thoughts with just how this crude market has kind of been stuck in this sideways range here for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's interesting. Crude oil is very important. Everybody in the world needs it. It's, when you look at the economy, you kind of think crude oil, copper, something that's not, obviously you can't put in your car and burn or in a plane, but gold had an abnormally big week. I think last time I looked, gold was around $19.15 an ounce. And with the whole crypto burning down and melting, and people watching this Madoff special on Netflix, I think people are looking for good old-fashioned conservative investments. And if that means putting some money in the bank and just earning interest, that's really conservative. And thank God there is interest. I mean, interest is a two-edged sword, Jess. You're either earning it or you're either paying it. And if you're young and in a lot of debt, you're not happy about owing money. If you're old and have a lot of cash, you're like, this is wonderful. I bring my money to the bank and they send me extra home. So there's people who need a lot of cash and a lot of money are really having a hard time dealing with these increased interest rates. And that, of course, would be a lot of the people listening to this show. The American farmer or anyone involved in agriculture is dealing with an incredible amount of dollars because they put the crop in 23 in a record high cost of production, record high labor costs, still incredibly hard to get labor, good quality labor, high cost production, cash rents are going up, a lot of things going up. And then, like you and I talked about earlier, the grains were in a little bit of a slump till that report, and it gave them a little boost in the arm. So a very expensive year to farm and dealing with big dollars. Keep an eye on those dollars, sharpen your pencil, and get ready to have a good 23, but we're going to need the bushels to help us be profitable.
Well, I think on that note, that feels like a good spot to wrap it up here today. Tommy, if folks want to reach out to you and get some advice with their trading there at Advanced Trading, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yep. 1-800-664-4383. I live in the Midwest in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I also have a place in office in Fargo, North Dakota, which I hear you'll be traveling to this weekend.
Yeah, I'm heading up there and got some meetings to attend to, and so I'll get to enjoy the snow and the cold for a couple of days. I look forward to it.
Sounds good.
Tommy, hey, always a pleasure. Thanks for being on the show again here today, and we'll get you back on soon. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you, my friend.
That's going to do it for Market Talk today. Find us online, markettalkag.com. I'm Jesse Allen. Have a great afternoon.